Hi students, today we are going to be learning about Trisha Brown, who is one of the most influential choreographers in the postmodern movement. This is just a quote from Trisha. It says, "If I am beginning to sound like a bricklayer with a sense of humor, you are beginning to understand my work." So just showing that she had a sense of humor when it came to her work, even though it seemed very mundane. We are going to watch a brief clip from this YouTube video of Trisha Brown's work.
This is a very distinct section of the dance. What we're seeing is Trisha Brown dancing with Eva Kartzag, a Hungarian-born, ballet-trained dancer. She is doing a variation on Trisha's movement that has more of the knowledge of ballet's codified techniques. So you see Trisha as contrasted with Eva Karzag's elegant port de bras, her landings in fifth position, her more articulated balletic leaps, as opposed to Trisha's completely uncodified and deliberate refusal of codification and categorization that define Trisha's movement vocabularies, which were completely original to her and to her own body. Trisha did not believe in performing improvisation except on a few special and often private occasions. However, her passion for the vitality of movement let her want to create the effect of improvisation in something that was choreographed. And she was working on this going back to 1977. What we're seeing here is a remarkable solo performed by Stephen Petronio, one of today's most important contemporary choreographers. The performance is emblematic of Stephen's distinctive and remarkable athleticism, power-propelled performance. His ability to access movement impulses from all different parts of the body is one of the principles of Brown's movement that Stephen most brilliantly realized. In 1996, the company returned to
and that was just a brief section of one of her pieces. So just a little bit of history about Trisha Brown. She was born in Albertine, Washington in 1936 and received a BA degree in dance from Mills College in 1958. Brown later received a DFA from Bates College in 2000. For several summers, she studied with Louis Horst, Jose Limon, Merce Cunningham at the American Dance Festival, and then that was held at Connecticut College. So she had a great dance background and studied with some pretty prolific modern choreographers. She taught at Reed College in Portland, Oregon, and then she moved to New York City in 1961 and formed her company in 1970. And when she was with this company, she created over 100 dances. A little bit more about her. She choreographed multiple operas, including Carmen and Pygmalion, which are some very notable ones that we are all familiar with. She was also an accomplished visual artist, so in addition to her choreography, she also created visual art as well. She was the first female choreographer to receive the MacArthur Foundation Fellowship Genius Award, received 5 fellowships from the National Endowment for the Arts, served on the National Council on the Arts from 1994 to 1997, received the National Medal of Arts in 2003, and she passed away on March 18th, 2017, so very recently. Just a brief history on where her company performed. They performed mostly in the Judson Memorial Church, and it says Judson was the only place to perform then, and that is how it began. At Judson, the performers looked at each other and the audience. They breathed audibly, ran out of breath, seated, talked things over. They began behaving more like human beings, revealing what was thought of as deficiencies as well as their skills. So what you'll see in Trisha Brown's work is that most of these tasks feel very mundane and that it's not necessarily dancing, but completing a task. So just more about Judson. Beginning in the 1950s, Judson Church began supporting all radical arts ministry. Space was provided for artists to exhibit their art, rehearse it, and perform it. It provided a safe place for artists to experiment with their work, no fear of censorships, and she began her dance theater in 1962. She shaped the postmodern dance movement and the avant-garde dance movement form. And these are some of Trisha Brown's iconic choreographic processes. So accumulation is one of them, which we will learn about later. Pedestrian gestures, which is what we see regular people doing and us as dancers doing in our everyday lives. Improvisation within set boundaries, so giving dancers a prompt to work with and then having them improvise within that prompt. And then site specific, which is a really cool one, which is where you go to a place outside of the studio and choreograph and move and reflect the world around you as opposed to set technique principles. So we're going to learn about accumulation. And accumulation exposes the cognitive challenge of performing, showing the dancer and the body in the course of thinking, not merely gesturing in space, and offers the satisfaction of watching a composition materialize according to an indissoluble unity of intent and action, the body's vocabulary as movement and language. So there's accumulation, deaccumulation, and repetition. Pedestrian gestures, which was another one of Trisha Brown's choreographic processes. So walking, climbing, falling, leaning, balancing, all things that we see in the real world. Putting on and taking off clothes, often used untrained dancers to achieve the task in a truly ordinary way. So she would choreograph on people who are not trained in dance at all and then use that movement vocabulary on her company. It centered around a task and it used the task movement as reoriented or as the whole piece. And then these are just a few quotes from Trisha at the bottom. All right, and she says, when you perform something that is improvised within a structure, your senses are heightened. And I think that we can all attest to this as we have improvised in class. And we have found that, when we improvise, our senses are heightened because we feel a little bit out of place and we feel a little bit uncomfortable, which is good because that's what forms new movement patterns. Let's watch this for a moment, and I want you to just think. This is called Man Walking Down a Wall, and you'll see it as a very, very mundane sort of task that pushes the limits, but it literally is just a man walking down the wall, and I want you to just think about this to yourself. Is this art, or is this not art? Okay, and we're going to leave it at that because that is basically it. So maybe just jot down your thoughts on this. Is this art or is this not performance art? And then we will discuss this in class because it's an interesting piece to look at. Okay. And then just to follow that up, some dance is not entertainment, and that is what Trisha Brown has said about some of her work. So just a quote to follow that up. So we're going to learn about the cube right now, which is one of my favorite choreographic techniques. So here you'll see the cube, and you want to imagine yourself in the very center of this cube, so about where 27 is. And what we're going to do is we are going to use this cube to create choreographic phrases. Now, if I were to have a word, I would want that word to spell out my name. And so you'll see down here that each letter represents a number in the cube. And what you will do with this cube is that you will take your phrase or your name and you will spell it out. And this could be spelled out in many different ways. You can gesture toward the letter that the number coincides to, or you can face that direction. There's many different ways to do this. We will clarify this in class, but this is what will be done in addition to your Google Forms that you will fill out. That goes with this PowerPoint presentation. Just a little bit about the assignment that will come up. So after you have done your Google Forms, you have filled out your Google Forms questionnaire, you will then, in class, we will then create our phrase. We will draw our cube and label it 1 through 27 or A through Z. You will create your phrase a minimum of 24 characters, including spaces, and coordinate the letters with the numbers on the cube. And then the dancers must create a 2-minute solo using the structure of the cube as well as accumulation. And a dancer can use multiple cubes in a space to allow for travel. All choices must be clearly articulated on the paper with your drawn cube, i.e. if you move to a different cube, you use accumulation or deaccumulation, repeat any of that stuff. So that is what we will be doing in addition to our Google Forms that you should complete before you come to class so we can be ready and prepared for this assignment. Thank you so much for listening in, and I will see you in class next time.